I want to move on to the future trends and what we can outlook for. The questions that are especially important because the right answer today just may not be the right answer a few years from now. And so, Omkar, I'd like to start with you. What emerging manufacturing innovations or operating models do you believe will, in fact, have the biggest impact on commercialization over the next handful of years?
This is near and dear to me, so thank you for this question. And I may take a little longer to explain this, but I'm truly passionate about the emerging manufacturing innovations, right?
Perfect.
I'll talk about three of them. So these three are the ones that I think will actually move the needle, and data and AI runs across all three of them. So first is this whole closed automated manufacturing platforms. We've seen a lot of debate around this. Multiple conferences that I go to, you have vendors that pitch their automated robotics-enabled manufacturing platforms. I'm actually working with a couple of them at some of my clients as well. I will say that the real value here isn't the hardware, it's what the hardware generates. So the continuous process data. That's the reason I said data and AI runs through all of them. So closed and automated manufacturing platform, I think that is one big innovation. The second one is quicker or faster analytics that is AI driven, right? So you have AI driven reviews of batch records, for example. The biggest commercial bottlenecks isn't manufacturing throughput. It really isn't. It's actually the release cycle time. So we're working with some companies to do AI assisted comparability assessments or even doing predictive release testings. And if you looked at the FDA's guidance from last year, and to the earlier question about the regulatory guidance, I'm not an FDA expert, but what I have read is the guidance on AI in regulatory decision making for biologic signals. Like it really signals that this pathway is real. It's not aspirational, right? And the third big thing I would say is digital orchestration. This is where, again, data actually becomes a product. In this day and age, I feel the company that will win commercially won't just have the best batch record in isolation. They will have the best operating picture, like the clinical scheduling, the manufacturing slots, logistics, quality release, the treatment site readiness, all connected in real time with AI really surfacing the right decision to the right person before a slot is missed or before a patient misses their therapy. So to sum it up, right, I think the next 5 years, to your question, Erin, will not be won by the company with the best science. In addition to science, they'll be won by the company that can make that science reliable, repeatable, and at the right cost.
Agreed completely. We talk to our readers consistently, and the sentiment is just what you said. The innovation is there, and the operations and the scalability have to meet it where it's at. One more question before we move, because I have some questions for Zoe as well. Are there technologies the industry is talking about heavily that you think may ultimately be less transformative than expected? And I suspect that in some way, shape, or form, AI has its place in this response, but I'd love to hear your answer on this.
Yeah, and I did not mean to oversell AI in my previous response, but the technology is most at risk of overselling AI. And not because I don't think it won't deliver, but I've seen that most CGT operations aren't yet built to really receive and leverage the power of AI. So just to elaborate on this a little more, AI's promise in CGT manufacturing is real, right? Predictive process controls, as I mentioned earlier, deviation detection, release optimization, scheduling, digital twins, the whole concept. But AI doesn't create clean data. It consumes that data. And using that data is when you can actually enhance your operations, right? So the majority of CGT operations that I've encountered so far, they still run, as I mentioned earlier, on fragmented systems, disconnected scheduling, manufacturing execution. You feed that architecture into an AI model, you won't get transformation. You'll get noise. You'll get the AI agreeing to please you. You'll get sophisticated outputs, but I wouldn't rely on them. I would not have confidence on them. So the same logic applies to automation as well, by the way. I know we talked about automation earlier. You lock in a highly specific automated platform before the process is stable, and you haven't really encoded efficiency. You've encoded your current assumptions and made them very expensive to change. So to me, AI, to your question, AI won't under-deliver because the technology is weak. It will under-deliver because the foundation wasn't built right, built first.
Terrific advice, and echoes a lot of, like I said, like what we hear on Cell and Gene. So thank you for that very pragmatic and realistic response. Zoe, from your perspective, looking ahead, what capabilities will separate the companies that successfully scale globally from those that kind of struggle operationally?
Yeah, first of all, you have to have a pretty strong portfolio planning and also your capacity management, right? You need a standardized like quality systems and strong data infrastructure and analytics, and also cross-functional coordination across development, manufacturing, and supply chain teams. Your organizational agility to support multiple programs simultaneously are also extremely important in this capability. And then also learning from your past experiences, having a dedicated project teams with leaders that are able to cover broader projects and functions. And also cross-functional communications and collaborations can suffer if the culture doesn't always scale with your organization. So culture is also a very important part of that.
Yeah, that's a great point about the culture. That's a really good point. How early should companies begin building for global regulatory and manufacturing harmonization? How early?
As early as possible, right? Organizational complexity often grows alongside the manufacturing complexity. And you have to have a really, very clear decision-making process and accountability. It becomes increasingly important as part of that process. And also you have to have a strong alignment across technical, operational, and your quality functions that can help reduce the execution risks in this particular process.
Sure, fair. So I have a question for both of you, and Zoe, we can start with you, and then Omkar, I'd love to hear your response on this too. If you could give one piece of manufacturing strategy advice to a cell and gene therapy company entering phase 1 today, what would it be? Zoe, I'll start with you.
Me first off, Omkar.
Oh, you could go, sure.
Okay. Yeah, so my strong advice, always make sure your overall team alignment are on the same page, right? Your research, your CMC development, your manufacturing, your regulatory. And if you don't align well, obviously it's really hard to get that kind of clinical trial phase 1 launched. So that's, and also my overall personal experiences as well. So.
Love it, Zoe. That's a very valid point, and I think that would have been top of my list as well in terms of advice. Just to maybe add to it, the one piece of advice that I have always given is to early stage CGT companies is to design for optionality, but start building a commercial discipline now, even though you might be 3 to 5 years out from BLA filing. You don't need a full commercial network in phase 1, obviously not. But every decision you make on process, on suppliers, analytics, digital infrastructure, data, it either preserves your ability to scale or it quietly forecloses it. So most teams don't realize the manufacturing model has locked in until 12 to 18 months after it actually did. And that can be a little late. So the companies that scale well in CGTs are not the ones that spent the most amount of money early, right? They're the ones that learn deliberately and make each decision with the next phase already in mind. So the best time to design for scale was 2 years ago, and that's always something that you hear. But the second best time is phase one. That's where you are right now. So build that optionality as you make your decisions.
Oh,
Yeah,
terrific advice.
I agree. Also, your agility, right? So the open mind of in the early phase, how you design things, bear the end of the late stage in your mind, if that's the path that you want to go.
Yeah. Very good.
Terrific advice. Terrific advice from both of our panelists. Well, audience, that brings us to the end of our Cell and Gene Live. And I'd like to sincerely thank Omkar and Zoe for joining us today. It's their time and insight that drove this timely and valuable discussion. So my sincere and warm gratitude to them. Thank you for joining us today as well. And we will see you on July 7th for our next Cell and Gene Live. And thank you again for joining us. And we hope you have a terrific day.